Welcome to episode 227 of Empty the Bench on the Empty the Bench podcast that are presented by WolfSpreads. He's Tom Albano. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at ETB Sports. Follow us on the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, 726 subscribers on YouTube, youtube.com/ETB Network. Go hit like and subscribe and help us grow our way to 1,000. Check out our website, which is growing by the day in blogs. We just had another contributor added to our blogging platform with a story that actually we're going to talk about in this episode. etbpodcast.com. Go check it out. We have football, we have baseball, we have college sports. We have a little bit of everything. So go check out our ETB blog on our website as well. Make sure you go listen wherever you get your podcasts as well. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Odyssey, Acast, wherever you get your podcasts, that's we are available on the platform. So we have a lot to get into. A lot.
Yeah.
This is going to be a hefty episode. There's a lot going on. We have Kim Mulkey. We have two parts of Kim Mulkey, which we will get to.
Well, let's be honest. It's 4 parts of LSU.
It's 4 parts of LSU. So we have Kim Mulkey, who decided to basically threaten defamation against a Washington Times writer, and then threaten litigation against an LA Times writer.
Yeah, it's a Washington Post, not Washington.
I mean, Washington Post, excuse me. Yeah, and then Angel Reese making comments which were quite literally controversial, which we'll get into.
I think more controversy should be going to the fact that the LSU team walked off before the national anthem during the Elite Eight.
We'll get there too. That's a whole different issue, and we have plenty of tape to back this up. Also, so you'll get to see some of the tape on the video side of this as well.
Well, and then the rest of this episode, we had some other headlines that we were going to do, and then, of course, about an hour or probably 2 hours before we hit the record button, bomb drops in the NFL. Stefon Diggs out of the Buffalo Bills, going over to the Houston Texans in a trade. That's not the only trade we had, though. Hassan Reddick going to the Jets from the Eagles. So Stefon Diggs leaves the AFC East. Hassan Reddick enters the AFC East.
Yeah, and on top of that, we are going to talk baseball. Yes, I said that correctly. We are going to talk baseball. It might not be early on, but it's already fight night in Major League Baseball.
Couple of balls. You got the Mets and the bad blood between them, then Reese and Rhys Hoskins. Obviously, Hoskins now with the Brewers, but all the bad blood that stems from when he was with the Phillies is still there. And you got Genesis Cabrera and Genesis Cabrera pulling off a little shove of Jose Caballero. I'll shove his face, I should say.
Yeah, that was bad. It was like a bunch of howling wolves. And speaking of wolves, the Timberwolves in the NBA, the A-Rod ownership not going so well. We'll break that down.
Over.
It basically is over. We'll go into that more. I'll break that down because that's coming in the NBA circles. We'll do that at the end.
Get through all this because you have a major announcement you want to make at the end of the show.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to want to hear this announcement because something exciting is coming. Well, one exciting announcement, and we have some scheduling changes, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Let's say I'll just leave it like this. Enjoy the last ETB Sports on Thursday for about a month.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of putting it. But let's get going. So, number one, the Washington Post releases a story on Kim Mulkey, which we were already tipped off by Kim Mulkey herself, the LSU women's basketball head coach, noting she didn't say what was exactly in the story, but now we find out that there was an estranged relationship with family members and an alleged mistreatment of gay players, one including Brittany Griner, was reported in this story. I read the story. I don't know how much you read of the story.
A little bit.
It's not good.
I mean, she is a flawed human. It definitely looks like that. She is a flawed human, which I mean, everybody is flawed, but I feel like the thing that really stands out to me is the allegations of mistreatment. I mean, the estranged relationship with family members, it's not good, but unfortunately, we've seen that with a lot of
Families fight. What do you expect?
we've seen that well, I was gonna say we've seen that with a lot of athletes and coaches in sports, including one right here in New York with your favorite team in the whole wide world.
Yeah, well, that's not
And,
saying much.
if anybody's out there not understanding what I'm referring to, I'm talking about Mr.
X.
Can't we go one episode without hearing from him, please?
I don't think I played that last week. Or
Actually, you're right. You're right. But
we did go an episode. Now we need to bring it back.
we got to have an Aaron Rodgers counter now for how many episodes in a row we go. It's like a bad streak. But this story breaks, and all hell breaks loose.
Well,
Kim Mulkey, we haven't heard anything about defamation yet.
Yeah, well, it had already broken loose once Kim Mulkey said that she was going to.
But I want to point out one thing. She put more attention on this story by threatening defamation before a story even hit the Washington Post. So what did she expect by threatening defamation? Which, by the way, we talked about this, I think, last week, that there's going to have to be a huge amount of proof to prove defamation.
Well, as far as I know, Nick, Kim Mulkey didn't even read the story. I think
she didn't.
She basically said her lawyers were going to read it.
But what's the word used, Leslie? Malice. To prove malice, you're literally going to have to prove that this was done on purpose to ruin someone's reputation, hence the word defamation. But I don't think you're going to be able to prove this.
So, taken from CNN, because all of a sudden, all the outlets started reporting on the Washington Post story. It's the story.
I have it up in front of me here.
It paints a picture of a coach whose brash manner and tendency to hold a grudge make her one of the most polarizing figures in college basketball history, and of a life devoted to the pursuit of basketball excellence that has left in its wake a series of fractured relationships. I mean, look, that's not exactly something that is uncommon, unfortunately, when it comes to sports. Now, the allegations of mistreatment of gay players, that's a little bit...
That's a problem.
That if that's true, that's a big problem.
Well, because here's the thing. If that's proven accurate, she might get fired if that's the case.
It might. And it's weird because you would think, Nick, that that portion would have been the bigger portion to the story, but Kim Mulkey getting out in front of this story and basically threatening defamation and everything kind of took some of the momentum of the story away. It almost is like the story itself, Nick, based on the way Kim Mulkey got in front of it and how she reacted with it. It almost feels like this story was kind of to use the term, letdown.
Well, actually, the other direction I really was going to go with it is the way that she reacted to the story makes me think that some of this is true.
And, I mean, I don't know how much... I mean, I can see the estranged relationship with the family members. The mistreatment of gay players is an allegation, and...
That's a mess. By the way, if she didn't fight it, it would make me think even more that was a problem if she wasn't fighting that allegation against the Washington Post.
Because since you read the story in full, former players came out and spoke to the Washington Post, right?
Yeah, I can't find the writer at the moment.
But she mentioned former players who were upset with her, essentially. I forget the term that she used.
Yes. Yeah, no. That was disgruntled coaches and former players. So we don't really know the names. So that's kind of up in the air at the moment. This still has a hit piece vibe. I won't say it's a hit piece because now we're getting into the weeds of, is the stuff real or is it not? Which we don't know until lawyers get involved, because I think that's going to happen. I guarantee you Kim Mulkey and her team are scanning this article, looking for every piece of evidence that they can use to figure this out. It also says in the article that in 2013 she was suspended after she criticized referees. So she has an attitude problem for sure. That we know.
I mean, I mean, she's a high intensity coach. We've seen high intensity coaches in college basketball before.
Well, who was it? Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight, yeah.
That? I mean, Bobby Knight was a coach way before there were rules and regulations on how to treat college athletes. He would throw chairs, he would hit players allegedly, and do a bunch of other things. And he would run his players to exhaustion. You can't even do that anymore in today's college game. But this is a damning story for college sports.
Well, what do you think about Kim Mulkey's comment where she said basically that the timing of it, and she went, "Are you surprised?"
I mean, I don't know. Again, I'll say the same thing that I said last week. What is the motive for the Washington Post besides if they have information that stuff happened? What's the motive?
I don't know. Nick, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is a former player, like you're referring to, a former player reached out and it led to a rabbit hole, essentially.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. But again, could a player be making up stuff? Not saying that it could be true or not be true, but could they be making that up and leading to a rabbit hole?
But it's going to be hard when you've got multiple former players and coaches speaking out.
Right. I mean, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be tough to prove malice or defamation because she's a public figure. And public figures don't get any benefit of the doubt.
That I'll agree.
It also doesn't help that Brittany Griner is the big name player-wise that was mistreated.
Yeah. All right. But let's go over to part 2 because now the Washington Post was not the only media platform that got targeted by Kim Mulkey. So, following the game, so I believe they played on Saturday, the day that the Washington Post story dropped. In the post game, she does mention the Washington Post story, but then it also brings up a column that one of the sports writers at the LA Times released on that released. I'm not going to say when because I don't have the dates.
I don't remember exactly. It was over the weekend.
Yeah, it was over the weekend. But basically what had happened was LSU was going to be playing UCLA, and the LA Times writer, the sports columnist, put out a column and basically detailed the matchup as good versus evil. That UCLA, the native college there, was all the forces of good, and the LSU team represented evil and everything wrong with college basketball.
UCLA, LSU is America's sweethearts versus its basketball villains.
Yes.
Now, I'll go first because I have a feeling what you're going to say. That's inappropriate.
I feel like it's not uncommon for sports columnists.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's not uncommon for sports columnists, sports writers to depict a good versus evil matchup when it comes to a rivalry team or when it comes to, let's face it, what LSU was becoming kind of at the time. Well, you might even say stretching back to last year's national championship when the whole thing went down between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, with the whole taunting thing, that basically LSU seemed to be, I'm not saying they are, but kind of the depiction of the villain team. Kind of like how like in MLB, the Yankees are the depiction of the evil team. The
evil empire. Yeah.
The Patriots in the NFL were the evil team.
Dallas Cowboys. Yeah.
The Dallas Cowboys. But my point being, it's good. It's not uncommon. The problem is that what you're doing essentially is you're depicting all these college athletes on LSU's team who, remember, are 18 to about 21 years old. They're adults, but they're very young adults. They're just entering adulthood now. And you're depicting them basically as everything that's wrong with the basketball world, which is not fair.
And that's the problem I have. Now, the other question I'll ask, and this is more a nerdy journalism question and not a opinion of the story. I thought that title sounds like opinion to me.
Well, Nick, column.
I understand, but
column is an opinion.
I don't know. I just feel like, regardless, I just feel like it was inappropriate because you're putting a thought in someone's head without giving background.
A sports column, sports opinion, yeah, that's opinion writing. That's not.
So they took the cop-out route so that they could make up their own title.
Well, let's talk about the big issue, not just what we just talked about with the good versus evil comparison, but the term that was used in the LSU piece.
I found it. Yeah. So the piece referred to UCLA as America's Sweethearts and Milk and Cookies, which I really don't have to explain that terminology. If you live under a rock, I apologize.
Enough. That's bad enough.
And then conversely, it referred to LSU as dirty debutantes and Louisiana hot sauce.
Come on.
Like, I understand what you're saying, and I agree that a column is opinion, but there has to be a line.
Yes. I didn't say that I completely agreed with that. I'm saying the reason you're like, oh, background and fairness, and like, well, that can't apply to an opinion column. Now, there are lines you don't cross. You don't call 18 to 21-year-olds who are just playing a sport, playing basketball, evil. You don't call, all these terms, you don't call them
debutantes.
Dirty debutantes.
Yeah.
You don't call them hot sauce. You don't call your own team, the 18 to 21-year-old women on your own team, milk and cookies.
I mean, like I said, if you live under a rock, I apologize, but I'm not explaining what half that stuff means because it's self-explanatory when you read these things. Now, I will give the writer a ton of credit because I think it was a day later, if I'm not mistaken, they went back and they edited the title.
And by the way, the writer's name is Ben Bulch.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And he went back. He even wrote a long apology. So I give him a lot of credit in that regard. But you and I say this all the time. When it hits the internet, what happens?
It's out there now.
It's forever.
And yes, they can make updates, and they did so. They issued an editor's note, a correction, or whatever. But the damage is done. It was out there. People know about it.
There's no return. Like, don't get me wrong. Most reporters, columnists would have written this and said, I'm out of here. I'm not commenting. This guy at least took the responsibility, at least, to say, all right, I effed up. I need to take responsibility. And in the long run, he probably will not lose his job because at least he did it right away.
Yeah, he's going to be fine. There's nothing that's going to come out of him.
But the problem is, in today's digital media culture, even journalism online, what are people looking for? They're no longer looking for journalism. They're looking for what?
They're looking for, the thing to click on. They're looking for all the
clicks. They're looking for clicks. That's it. Plain and simple. That's it. It doesn't get any more complicated.
Well, here's my question, because I was a little confused by the way you're working. Are you saying that the news outlets are looking for stuff that will click, or are you saying, because it sounded like what you were saying was that people are looking for something to click on?
They're the organizations are looking for clicks. They judge by clicks.
Because I think it goes both ways. Because a big long feature piece on, I'm trying to put myself in the mind of.
Well, you've done it.
I'm trying to put myself in the mind of somebody who just browsing the internet. Like, there's this. What I was saying is that basically there is no true respect for true journalism anymore. That this long, big feature piece on a profile on some legendary coach, people will click off of that. But we're going to talk about MLB brawls in a little bit on this show. When somebody sees brawl, click.
Well, because people like to see fights. That's why hockey gets along in a lot of circles. But I want to refer to a line on one of our blogs, and one of our newest contributors, Mackenzie Meany, who formerly wrote for Deadspin, which was just sold off. and had their staff unfortunately let go. Now she's over here with us. She wrote a line at the beginning, which I actually think was superb and is right on the money. She wrote, "You can be a good coach, but not a great person." And LSU's Kim Mulkey is a prime example of that with things she said and how they've impacted those around her. I think that's right on the money.
I think so because, look, I mean, as much as we were just ripping on Kim Mulkey within the last portion of the segment, here she's basically within the right.
Right. I mean, I don't know. First of all, why is LA Times getting involved in this?
Again, because they're played UCLA.
So they're using an excuse of their team being involved just to write something against Mulkey.
It would. Do you think that?
Yeah, totally. If UCLA is not in the tournament, there's no need for the story.
Again, I feel like the story could have been written, Nick, but it just could have been written in such a better way.
Well, the derogatory terms don't help it.
Right.
And I don't know. I like to read. This is going to sound weird because you wouldn't think this. I like to read stuff that's written well, like that was taken time, put the facts in. I don't want to see something put out there, Skip Bayless, saying dumb things just for the sake of clips. And we don't even have time to get to that. If you go to our ETB network TikTok, I put out a clip of Paul Pierce and Skip Bayless, and basically Paul Pierce saying that Caitlin Clark is white and basically beat a bunch of black girls. And that's why Skip Bayless's show will be gone very soon. And Paul Pierce, did people not learn when he was at ESPN? And Tom, you and I talked about this when it happened, with all the weed and the strippers, and it got him fired. He didn't care. And Fox Sports 1 brings him in as a contributor to Undisputed.
Dude, I can't watch the FS1 sports shows. They are ungodly and unbearable.
And politically motivated.
It is awful. Like, I know we've criticized ESPN a ton in the past,
but FS1 is catching up.
I will watch anything ESPN related over anything FS1.
Yeah. Now
at this point, the only time I ever turn into FS1 is for MLB games.
The leftover MLB games. Yeah.
Right. The MLB games, if I want to watch or rewatch an episode of SmackDown when it's on, which that's going to be going away starting in October.
Is that the Netflix deal?
No, that's when SmackDown moves to USA.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
It's the first part to the deal.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, but speaking of Mulkey, we said there's multiple parts to this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do we want to play I'll play the video first, or should we? Yeah. Okay, so let me set this up. So if it wasn't enough for Kim Mulkey to have allegations of mistreating players before the game, which, by the way, was the most highly anticipated game of March Madness on the women's side.
They released a ratings report about how great the ratings were.
I think I read it was like 14 million people watched that game. It was the most watched game over MLB, NBA, and NHL, they said this year.
Which just before we get into any of this, just goes to the star power that Caitlin Clark has. And I'd even say the star power that Angel Reese
has. I agree. She's still a great player, regardless of what we're going to talk about.
And a lot of it stems from what happened in last year's championship game when LSU beat Iowa.
By the way, that game ended up being way better than people realized, the way that game played out last year. And people are mad because this matchup came in the Elite Eight. It was going to happen at some point.
Right. I mean, look, I understand the frustration that it took place in the Elite Eight, but blame the NCAA committee. They're the ones who laid out the
blame the schedulers. It's their job. Mm-hmm. But okay, so before the game, most highly anticipated game, Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, and all of a sudden, the national anthem starts to play, and
LSU was not there.
LSU was not there. The Iowa players, I think, were actually like holding hands in unison, if I'm not mistaken, on the other side of the court. Then they moved the camera over, and no one's standing on the other side, and LSU's in the locker room. Now, this is not the first time we saw this. We saw this in the NFL when the whole Colin Kaepernick situation happened.
Right, you're talking about like 2016. Well, after and then 2017 when Trump made those comments. About
That was not good either. But this reminded me a little bit of the NFL walking off into the locker room.
It's been some time, I think, since we've had a national anthem controversy. The last one that I can think of was Gabe Kapler, I think, when he was managing the Giants.
I think he just sat in the dugout, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he got scrutinized for that, but he didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But so we don't see them. Game plays. Great game, by the way. And I'm getting annoyed because people are saying it was a blowout. I don't consider a 94-87, I think was the score.
Yeah, that's not really a blowout. And Nick, LSU was leading at the half. There was a chance Angel Reese and LSU could have pulled it off twice.
So anyone that's calling this a blowout, you're obviously delusional about how numbers work. But then we get to the post game. And by the way, someone should tell Kim Mulkey to shut up during the post game press conference because it's getting her in trouble.
Let's play the clip. Play the clip.
So listen to the clip.
I don't even know when the anthem was played. We kind of have a routine where we are on the floor and then they come off at the 12-minute mark. That's when we just, I don't know, and we come in and we do our pregame stuff. I'm sorry. Listen, that's nothing intentionally done.
Are you kidding me? It's not intentionally done?
I don't know if I want to believe her, only because, Nick, of my experience with college basketball. So the 6 years that I was in school, now I had never attended an Elite Eight matchup or a conference tournament for that matter. So maybe the processes are different there. But what I always remember is they do the warm-ups. The team goes to the locker room, comes back out at about 5-4, 3-minute mark before the half begins. And then once the buzzer goes off, then both teams take the floor. They do the national anthem, and then they do all the, NCAA, this, and then the game gets started.
She claims, and I saw it in another video, that they walk off the court at the 12-minute mark. You don't think that's a little strange?
I mean, she says they have a routine. I guess
they always do it. She claims.
I guess, Nick, ultimately my question, and maybe it sounds bad that I'm questioning this, but again, lack of experience of being at the NCAAs and lack of, following basketball.
One of our guys is going to be there soon.
Oh, right. Because my question was going to be that you mentioned they walked off at the 12-minute mark. So is it like the regular season college games where the national anthem goes after the zeros hit? Or it's
kind of like postseason games when they push everything back for baseball because they have to do all the extra stuff before the games.
Right. So I'm saying, like, if there was still like 4 minutes left on the clock and they played the national anthem, like, is that how it works? That's the thing. I lack the experience in.
But here's the problem. It doesn't matter where the national anthem is.
I was gonna say, now, if you're asking me if I hear the anthem, then we
all stand. You don't have to put your hand on your chest. I don't care. But you got to stand and respect the anthem, for crying out loud. Like that. It's our country, for crying out loud. Like, come on. You can't walk off.
It's just a shame that talking about all that we're talking about with LSU, because we still got one other piece to talk about with this. It's a shame for such a great game and such a talented team. Especially talent like Angel Reese. We're talking about all of this and not the game itself.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. And by the way, because I see this all over Twitter and I don't agree with it. People say, oh, well, because of all this, I'm glad LSU got bashed in and blah, blah. Come on.
Are you surprised? But Nick, are you surprised?
I say that's rookie, if you ask me. Like,
I understand
acting that way.
I understand, but you understand the cesspool that social media is.
No, I get it. But like, people are saying, oh, because they got stirred up in controversy. I'm glad they got bashed in. Like, who says
again,
that?
Nick, anyone can say anything when they're behind a keyboard.
I understand, but you look like jerks doing that. I mean, by the way, again, it was not a bashing. Let's get that clear. First of all, this game was close all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
This was actually a spectacular game.
I loved it.
But we're not talking about the game. Again, it seems like...
And that's the problem. That's the sad part. Now, granted, our show talks about the new stuff.
Right. And by the way, Caitlin Clark had another 40-point game. 41 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 assists, if I'm not mistaken. She had an incredible game. She's going to go off and do incredible things, whether it's the Big Three or the WNBA or just make millions of dollars in endorsement money. And we're not even talking about it. Angel Reese had 17 points and 20 rebounds. I want to know how many people who are talking about this even watched the stat lines of the game after all this happened. No one, probably.
Unfortunately not.
It's a game. And what's that line that we say all the time when athletes do dumb things? It's a children's game. You get paid to play a children's game.
Oh, like we were talking about the a couple years ago when the MLB was going to lock out for the start of the season.
Yes, it's a children's game. And by the way, college athletes now get paid a lot of money because of NIL. Angel Reese, I don't know how much, but Angel Reese gets paid a decent amount of money. I do know Caitlin Clark cleared $3.1 million.
Well, we established that some of these NILs, especially with Caitlin Clark, are going to stretch through past her.
They'll become endorsement deals instead of NILs when they move, and she'll actually make even more money at that point. She had like 11 NIL deals, including Nike and Gatorade and all the big ones you could possibly have. So she's not going to be poor anytime soon, even though if the WNBA doesn't play ball, like we said, she could just tell them to screw off and go play in the Big Three.
Take that $5 million offer from Ice Cube, man.
I mean, she would be crazy not to take it, but we're getting off topic. But
all right. Well, there's one other thing we do have to talk about is post-game comments from Angel Reese. It's sad that we were just talking about everything great with Angel Reese, and now you want to talk about this.
Yeah, so Angel Reese after the game. Now, there's going to be different opinions of what people think this is. To me, this felt like a little playing the victim because this happened right after the game was over. Now, I'll let everybody listen to the comments. You and I were already talking about it, but listen to the comments and then we'll talk about it.
I've seen so much. I've been attacked so many times. Death threats. I've been sexualized. I've been threatened. I've been so many things, and I've stood strong every single time. And I just try to stand strong for my teammates because I don't want them to see me down and not be there for them. So I just want to always just know I'm still a human. All this has happened since I won the national championship, and I said the other day I haven't had peace since then. And it sucks, but I still wouldn't change. I wouldn't change anything, and I would still sit here and say I'm unapologetically me. I'm going to always leave that mark and be who I am and stand on that. And hopefully the little girls that look up to me, and hopefully I give them some type of inspiration that, hopefully it's not this hard and all the things that come at you, but keep being who you are. Keep waking up every day. Keep being motivated, staying who you are, staying 10 toes.
So those comments come out, and people all of a sudden are speculating, is she playing the victim after the game? What I will say first, so we don't get all the comments of, well, why are you blaming her for all her stuff? I agree that she's probably been attacked a bunch on the internet. I have no doubt.
I was saying, unfortunately, Nick, and I hate when I have to play this card, but this is one where I have to. As an African-American woman who has, been the center of controversy before, as we made mention about last year with the Caitlin Clark thing, I'm not surprised. I would not be shocked if she has been sexualized, if she has been, given death threats and given inappropriate messages in her DMs.
Yeah, no one is questioning her. Let's be clear about that first.
And I think the comments Nick, are kind of motivating because she says, I would not change anything. I would stay true to who I am.
But here's part of the problem. Now, Angel Reese has a very aggressive attitude when it comes to on the court and off the court at her press conferences. And it gets her in trouble sometimes because of the way she acts.
Well, Nick, and this is another one where I have, I hate saying something and I want to be careful, but because of all that we were just talking about with LSU, look who her coach is.
You're not wrong. I agree with you.
And like as a coach, you're an influence. So if you're saying that Angel Reese is aggressive, meanwhile, we were just talking 20 minutes ago about how aggressive Kim Mulkey is.
No, I agree. I would say same thing. Aggressive coach. I mean, the other thing that really bugged me, like I showed you the picture that she has the queen's crown on the sideline. Now, I have no problem with that. You want to be the cocky athlete, I have no problem. But when you lose, you can't get all teary-eyed and whatever.
Well, Nick, I don't know if you saw, but she left the crown at her seat after the game. And it seemed like she was insinuating, because I don't know if you caught the comments about what she and Kim Mulkey said to Caitlin Clark. And it's something that we stretched last week. She is the queen right now. Caitlin Clark is the queen of college basketball.
Now I think another comment I heard also, and I think it was partially joking, is like, get out of here. We don't want to play you anymore. I think that was more joke.
It was absolutely a joke. It was.
But people were just, because people insinuate everything. But my point is that it's, I don't know how to say it exactly 100% correct, but it was not good timing, in my opinion.
When do you think the timing could have been?
If you want to address allegations, we now have social media platforms. We have the ability to talk when we want.
The problem, Nick, is she's still a student. And there's no guarantee, because I don't believe she's a junior, so there's no guarantee she's going to go on to and declare for the WNBA draft. I don't think she has a big 3 offer, which means some of what she's going to say is basically going to have to be monitored by, essentially, in this case, LSU. So I don't know if LSU is going to give her that kind of platform.
But here's the problem. With all the NIL stuff, the amateurism portion of protecting an athlete is kind of out the window. I hate to say it, but that's what it is. They're all getting paid millions of dollars.
But the school's going to have their own rules. Now, if Angel Reese wants to use one of those NIL deals to have her own platform with the media, then by all means. I'm just saying LSU as a school, Nick, as an educational institution, has a responsibility.
Right. And I'm not disagreeing, but I just felt like right after the game, taking the spotlight off of Iowa was not a good move.
I don't know if it necessarily took the spotlight off of Iowa, because now, I mean, the attention lasted for a day, and now the attention's back on Caitlin Clark as the Final Four for the women are about to start.
Right. And again, I think Angel Reese will probably end up in the WNBA because I think she's good enough to be in the WNBA.
Mm-hmm.
Will she get the same attention and the same value? I don't think so. I think Caitlin Clark is like what do they call it? A unicorn, or 101, as they say. Like LeBron was coming out of high school for the NBA.
That's what we talked about last week, yeah.
So I just think the timing was a little bit off. I don't disagree. If she's being attacked, then talk. Like, be public about it. Because we see what happens to some of these athletes when they don't publicize their issues. What happens? It affects them. Look at, and I hate to use this example, but look at Hollywood with what just happened with Nickelodeon, where all these kids hid how they were feeling for how long? They said some 10 to 12 years. Look at Drake Bell right now.
I know. It's
Amanda Bynes, like so on and so forth. But
as a kid who grew up on Nickelodeon, that's really tough.
We both did. So my point is that when you hide stuff, it makes it worse because you're basically pushing it down.
Yeah. All right, let's get off of the LSU talk. Let's get off of the March Madness talk. Let's talk about. Oh, by the way, just we didn't really have the time for it, but shout out to on the men's side. Shout out to NC State, number 11, tying the lowest seed ever to make it to the Final Four.
It's going to be an incredible Final Four. Also, I think Alabama made it for the first time.
Yeah, and there's a very realistic chance. I don't know how I can say realistic on the women's side when you got Caitlin Clark in Iowa, but there is a good possibility that UConn 10 years ago they won both the men's and women's national championships. They could do it again this year.
Excuse me. That would be an incredible feat 10 years after it actually happened for them to repeat. I think I asked you and what was it the other night? Has this ever happened? And I didn't realize it actually happened before.
10 years ago. And it's the only time it's ever happened.
But I think the Final Four on the women's side, and this is rare because you don't hear this very. I think the women's Final Four is more enticing than the men's.
I think so because you have a powerhouse like UConn, you have a star like Caitlin Clark, and I mean the underdog stories on the men's side with Alabama and NC State are great, but it's basically opened up the likelihood that it's going to be UConn versus Purdue for the national championship, and UConn likely winning the national championship on that end.
The stat of the tournament still UConn trailing for 28 seconds.
Yeah,
and that was probably a 2-0 lead at the beginning of a game. Probably.
All right, let's go over to the NFL side. Major news recently dropping. Stefon Diggs, the star wide receiver, once a former Viking, now was just with the Bills for several seasons, traded to the Houston Texans.
Wow. That's all I got to say. Now, you and I discussed this beforehand. Did you have it on the bingo card that he was going to be traded? Yes. We knew eventually he was going to get traded because he was disgruntled in the Bills locker room.
Yeah, and I was just listening to Adam Schefter, who first reported this, talk about it on ESPN. And basically, he's saying the reason Stefon Diggs was traded was a double reset. Yes, there were the issues in the locker room. So reset on the locker room end in that, obviously, Stefon Diggs, Nick, it was not a surprise year after year. He would come out and we would wonder if he was going to remain with a team. He did this in Minnesota. It continued into Buffalo. But it is also a salary cap reset. The Bills have made a number of cuts this offseason, Stefon Diggs now being the biggest of them because the team was basically over the cap.
Yeah, well, they were way over the cap, not just over it. Like at one point, they were like 50 million over the cap, if I'm not mistaken. Like they were going for it. They were going for it.
Oh yes.
So my point is, like, they were going for it. Like they were aggressively going for it, and it cost them when they keep getting eliminated every year. So it says the Bills will receive a 2025 second-round pick via the Vikings in exchange for Diggs, a 2024 sixth-round pick, and a 2025 fifth-round pick. The Texans acquired the pick from the Vikings when they traded their 2024 first-round pick to Minnesota last month.
I got to say,
that's really not a lot.
It's not a lot. I think Houston made out big.
Well, I think part of it is reputation with Stefon Diggs, who, what was it, the season before? Like, he ran out of the locker room when they got beat the postseason before.
Mm-hmm.
And if we remember correctly, wasn't he disgruntled in Minnesota and got traded to Buffalo?
Well, I said his all the rumors and his displeasure stretched back to his days in Minnesota.
I mean, I heard this on the radio when I was driving around today earlier, that basically Stefon Diggs has an expiration date everywhere he goes. Meaning, like, you'll get a good year or two from him, and then he'll have a disgruntled issue with the locker room, and then he's got to be gone again.
But, Nick, I will say, the Texans do make out big here, regardless of what you think about Diggs and his reputation. Nick, listen to this. In 2024, pending that everything goes through right, when, things stay as they are, I don't know if they will or not, the wide receiver room that CJ Stroud will have, listen to this, Stefon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Robert Woods, Noah Brown, John Mechie.
I mean, that's pretty good if you ask me. And
if CJ Stroud was able to, Nick, but if CJ Stroud, with all the injuries and all the youth that the Texans had last year, was able to get that team to the divisional round, to the final 8, bringing in Stefon Diggs, and if all those receivers stay healthy, Nick, there's a chance they could be competing with the Chiefs for the AFC title.
I mean, as long as Stefon Diggs can keep his head on straight and not cause a problem in the locker room, I think that they could be a Super Bowl potential type team.
I think the one question I'm going to have is now that you're bringing Diggs in, how, and maybe this is a question on the fantasy end, but that's multiple mouths to feed now.
Well, I was going to say this is going to be a problem for someone like Stefon Diggs who likes to use the running game, aka Joe Mixon being brought in the offseason after he almost went back to, was it Cincinnati? And
Yes.
then all of a sudden signed a deal with the Texans. That was a shock. They're well equipped offensively. Defensively, they were good, but they could use a little more help defensively.
But they have the defense. They had the defensive, like the Jets in 23. I mean, pardon me, the Jets in 22. They had the offensive and defensive rookie of the year, Will Anderson.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, they just need to have reps. Just keep going at it. The offense is going to carry the team. I think that they just got to keep the pieces together. CJ Stroud, now, what is he, 2 years in now? So
this is gonna be his second season.
His second season, excuse me. That you just have to hope he doesn't hit the sophomore slump. That's the issue you're going to run into. But this team is going to be awesome, and you're going to see a lot of people. Like when we do our football preview show, like I wouldn't be surprised, like if the Texans are higher up on our boards for a bunch of people.
Yeah, basically.
So this was a shocker. No one thought it was going to be the Texans, but they needed to get him out.
And now, now I'm curious what this is going to mean for the Bills, because was Stefon Diggs the number one key to Josh Allen's success? No. But I think that leaves then Gabe Davis as the wide receiver 1 in Buffalo, and I feel like he's way too inconsistent
and injury prone
to be the number 1. So I'm wondering if the Bills are going to go after a wide receiver in the draft now.
They're going to have to. They have no choice. But I could see, and again, I heard this on the radio earlier on, that they basically might ask Josh Allen to spin straw into gold in the wide receiver room. Like, even if it's not necessarily big names, if it's rookies or whatever.
That's a big ask.
Is that a playoff successful plan? No.
And I honestly think, Nick, this opens the door for the Dolphins. And, I know you were very skeptical about the team with Mr. RELAX there, but this opens the door once again for the Jets to potentially take on the AFC East. Like, I mean, that's what it weakens the Bills. Like, did it have to happen? Probably, but it weakens the team.
Right. And actually, speaking of Jets, we'll get there in a minute because there's a deal there. But Stefon Diggs had to be moved. It was basically the end of his time in Buffalo. I don't know if it's that. I don't know. Does he hate people in locker rooms? Does he not like the locker room culture? I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
But I don't know. Like, Minnesota was a great team when he was on it. Destroyed that locker room culture. Went here. They had good seasons. You see the pattern. Then they destroy the locker room culture. Will he destroy the Texans' locker room culture? I'm afraid, because you have a great young quarterback in Stroud, and you don't want to destroy the culture there. So we'll have to see what happens there. But since you talked about the Jets,
I think they definitely made out already with this offseason, getting Hassan Reddick for basically nothing. It was a conditional third, I think.
Which is basically nothing. So I don't know what the Eagles are doing. The Eagles are having probably one of the strangest off seasons ever.
Maybe it's another cap issue for him. Now, Hassan Reddick, I believe, is in the final year of his rookie deal. He's on the final year of a contract.
I can look it up.
Year, but not a rookie deal. But he is on the last year of a contract.
He looks like 3 years, 45.
Yeah, that he signed in 22.
So it said he had a potential out in 24. So right, I'm assuming with the trade, he's going to pick up the option year.
Well, right. That's the thing. This would be the offseason, which he could be out, but they traded him. So I'm assuming that means he's going to play here, and then you've got 4 more years after that. Now, the concern about Hassan Reddick right now is he's reached his age 30 season. But he's also been very healthy over the course of his career. So there is concerns maybe now that he's a Jet, it all starts to fall apart and he starts to get hurt. But I can't deny that this isn't a big pickup for the Jets. And like you mentioned, Nick, it's a conditional third. I believe it becomes a second if he plays like 60 or 65% of snaps this season. It's basically a pickup for basically nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they got to try and make it work to their best of their ability and see where they get. Again, it's all on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers being healthy. So if he's not healthy, it doesn't matter how many moves you make.
I would even say, Nick, it's on the health of him. It's on the health of Breece Hall. It's on the health of Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, this is
Sauce.
Yeah, there's a little. Well, not just health for him, staying off social media and staying off Twitter. But basically, you're gonna have to have the hospital on line one, depending with all these health issues. Do I like the move? Yes, I think it's a great move. But Aaron Rodgers has got to be on his game, or else this means nothing.
Moving on over, Nick, another story that was going to be basically a big point of our NFL talk, and now it's kind of gone down a little bit. Rashee Rice, his vehicle was involved in a 6-car accident. Police were looking for him, but in an update from a couple of days ago, he is now cooperating with authorities. Now,
I wonder why.
Now, I believe it was his vehicle, but I don't know if it was confirmed if it was him in the vehicle or if it was somebody using his vehicle.
The video footage caught them walking away from the car. So,
okay,
I'm assuming he was there. Yeah.
Him and others.
Yes. It was him and a few others. There were rumors. This is not confirmed. This is why I'm saying it's not confirmed, that there might have been weapons in the car.
Well, that's rumor right now.
That's why I said it's not confirmed. But that's why supposedly they ran from the scene.
Well, right now there's nothing going on. There's no updates to it. It was just that he was cooperating with authorities. So I don't know if he's necessarily going to get in trouble. Maybe the fact that he wasn't with the authorities at the start maybe gives him a game or two, knowing Roger Goodell. But I don't think much is going to come out of this unless there's more to it, like you mentioned with the weapon. But I don't really think there's going to be anything that comes out of it.
Well, so again, and our bloggers have been on tap with all the trending news. So Grant Winsare, our NFL blogger, was on this, and he said, Rashee Rice involved a 6-person crash. Most got away with minor injuries, but 2 people are hospitalized. That might change the game, partially that people were hospitalized. I'm just looking to see if he had any other information.
Sorry. I just don't know, Nick, if knowing what we know with Roger Goodell, knowing what we know with the NFL, even if he gets away with no charge, he's going to get something. At the same time, it's probably not going to be much. That's why I'm thinking 2 to 6 games, probably.
Now, the other thing we don't know, because it hasn't been confirmed, could he have been DUI?
Again, unless we get something, any sort of hint that there was anything of that, I can't believe it.
Strangely, this reminds me a little bit of Henry Ruggs.
I can't go that far.
I understand he killed somebody, but again, expensive cars, driving too fast, causing crashes.
It's an athlete being stupid. Unfortunately, we've heard too many of these stories.
And by the way, Rashee Rice is supposed to be one of the next up-and-coming wide receivers. Why the heck would you throw your career away doing something stupid?
Because dumb. And Nick, here's what I'm going to say. For the sake of the Chiefs, they can't afford a 6 to half a season suspension for Rice.
And it's probably killing them because he's such a great player that what do we do? Do we say that because he didn't kill somebody that it's okay? Or what?
I mean, they can't afford to lose him. Because they already lost Snead in this offseason. If they are without Rice for some time, I know we've talked about, Nick, that all Patrick Mahomes has to do is make playoffs, and all of a sudden he's going to be playoff pad, and the Chiefs are going to be unstoppable. But if you lose Rice for half the season, who knows if you're even going to make playoffs?
I think that could cost you 2 to 3 wins, at least not having him there. I know that's saying a lot because NFL wins and losses cost a lot in value, but he's your number one guy besides Travis Kelce. But Dumb. Like, just completely. And I don't know if you had a chance to see, they put the video footage out from some of the cars that were behind. This was it was a Corvette. First of all, we're talking about very expensive cars, by the way. A Corvette and a Lamborghini racing each other, going across 3 to 4 lanes of highway traffic.
Dumb, 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 dumb.
And the worst part, like, as the car was veering, because it was all the way to the left. This was like one of those, I don't know where exactly, it's like LA highways where like there's 5 lanes, and like they veered from the left lane all the way over into the median. So first of all, I don't know how that didn't kill somebody with how fast they were going.
They're lucky. That's why.
And I hate that these athletes sometimes, well, I'm an athlete, I'm indestructible, nothing's going to happen to me. You say that now. You say that now as an athlete, but you never know. By the way, there's another report that Rashee Rice leased the Lamborghini for $240,000. That's a very expensive car to
lease. That's a very expensive lease.
And supposedly they're calling it street racing.
That's what it is.
I don't know how you call something street racing when it's on the highway, but that's another technicality for another day. That's pretty much it. Apparently he owns the Corvette also. So this is bad news all around. All right.
Kim, let's move on to baseball. So, a couple of brawls. Let's talk about some opening week stuff. So, a couple of brawls here. Obviously, there are a lot of headlines coming out of opening week. The Yankees looking absolutely hot, sweeping the Astros. The Angels absolutely not looking hot to the point where they had to call a team meeting because they got blown out in their first 2 games. And
a failure.
Surprise, surprise! Mike Trout's the only one doing anything on that team.
By the way, the 474-foot blast in Florida against the Marlins over the stadium.
He's going to get traded to Philadelphia. I'm sorry. He's going to end up in
By the way, we'll get our dream recognized just 10 years too late of Trout and Harper playing together.
Yeah, but if we're going to talk about a former Philly right now in Reese Hoskins and a rivalry he has with the New York Mets, who I believe as of the time of this recording, Nick, which is Wednesday afternoon, are still winless.
Yeah, I mean, talk about physical and mental blows. Hold
on a second. Did you say blows?
Yes, blows. So this was bad. The Mets have come out in a literal shit show form. They're not playing well. They're making errors left and right. And then Rhys Hoskins slides into second base where Jeff McNeil is standing. And Jeff McNeil is a pansy. I'm sorry. Like,
so we need to give full context here for those who don't know what we're talking about. So there's a play that goes on during opening day. Hoskins is on first, ball gets hit. Now the Mets are trying to turn a double play. They get the force at second to get Hoskins out. Hoskins slides. Now MLB reviewed the slide and they determined it was a fine. There was nothing wrong with the slide.
Well, they have a slide rule now. That's part of the problem.
Now, was the slide going to help Rhys Hoskins get to base? No. It was going to be a clear out. But what you will see, Nick, because with how much you watch baseball as I do, you will see still the players still slide into second base. 1, to stop their momentum, and 2, as a means of maybe trying to break up the double play.
Well, you're really not allowed to break up a double play anymore, according to the rules of baseball.
Right. Okay. But then the slide rule comes in. The problem, Nick, is Jeff McNeil. He gets the ball, but it seemed like to me, Nick, maybe I don't know what you thought of the footage, but it looked like he got the ball to get the out, and then he bobbled it on the transfer that he wasn't going to get the out at first.
I remember seeing the famous signal, which you see every time, where they say ball transfer, pull the ball. So you're going to get the out at second.
Right. I was going to say, because if he had dropped it, then Hoskins would have been safe at second.
But now you see managers even challenging the neighborhood play. you can't even have the neighborhood play anymore because you could get challenged.
Well, I didn't know about this, Nick. Sorry to go off on a tangent, but when I was watching the Yankee Diamondback game on Tuesday night, that you can challenge multiple things.
Yes.
And if only one part of it is right, then you get to keep your challenge still.
That I didn't know. But
you get half credit is allowed in MLB.
Wait a minute. So in the NFL, when they challenge things, if you get half credit, that means you still okay. The math doesn't add up here, but of course MLB gets all the nice things, and NFL doesn't. But I mean, Jeff McNeil's out of line, like in a lot of ways. It was an aggressive slide, no doubt, but that's baseball. Or our favorite saying, "That's baseball," Susan.
Yes, because McNeil started to run at him, yelled at him, which caused the benches to clear.
No, actually, he went over him, if you remember, like, because he was on the ground still, and he did the little intimidation scream, which I don't get why athletes do that. But
now, apparently, to give fuller context, some of this stems from
the Philly days.
A couple of seasons ago with Philly, in which there was a whole thing that went down when Rhys Hoskins nearly got hit, and then the next day, Hoskins hit a home run while he was with the Phillies and did the slowest trot probably in Major League Baseball history.
I love when people hit home runs after that happens.
And so this whole thing goes down with McNeil. The one thing I'll give the Mets credit to, which you had an explanation for, Hoskins responded with the cry emoji, but did it in the dugout with all his teammates in front of him.
I mean, that was
a little
much. I mean, but Rhys Hoskins responds hitting a home run in that series.
Yeah.
And I say good riddance.
But then the next at bat, or the next day, gets hit with the pitch.
Well, they threw behind him. That was number one.
And the umpire just said, "I'm absolutely not having any of that," and threw. I forget who was pitching.
The pitcher. Yeah. I mean, well, because that was totally out of line. Because they went to the challenge, but I don't even know how I call it challenges in the review system for that.
Johan Ramirez.
No, but they went there's the review system and the challenge system.
That's the name of the pitcher.
Right. But I'm just saying, so they go and review the slide, which I think is ridiculous now that we're reviewing slides. And they said, all right, safe slide. Or at least, I don't know if they said safe slide, but it's a legal slide. So that's when the crying emoji stuff started, and which Jeff McNeil needs to grow up and stop. And he's probably just mad because the Mets stink, and they're probably going to lose 100 games. Their pitching is awful. You might start hearing rumors of Francisco Lindor wanting to be traded. Maybe Pete Alonso wants to be traded. He's in a free agent walk year.
Yeah, I was going to say he's already mad at the team for not offering him a major contract.
Well, you could blame Scott Boras partially for that, but
well, I was going to say, Nick, you're not going to like the news that I just saw before.
What?
Apparently Juan Soto wants a Shohei Ohtani style deal with no deferrals in free agency.
Really? I get it, but the Shohei contract was an outlier. How many times do we have to say this?
And if I'm not mistaken, Soto's a Boras client too, right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
This man is ruining the sport.
Yeah, he's a Scott Boras client.
This man is. Why would you? After the failure of an offseason that you just had with your players like Bellinger and Jay Montgomery and such, why are you going with this again? What the hell is Scott Boras' motive?
I mean, it's funny because you know how we say, like, either you have multiple talents or you go with the thing that always works for you. Scott Boras doesn't have multiple talents. He clicks the one button a million times.
No, the sad part is he does have multiple talents, and he just goes with the one thing that works.
I think you're giving him too much credit. I don't think he's as talented as you make him out to be. But
I thought you meant like he has multiple players. Like has the talent.
I'm talking about like when someone says, "Oh, I can play basketball. I can play baseball. I have multiple talents," or they just go with the one thing that's really annoying, but they do it really well. Scott Boras is the person that does one thing really well and just annoys everybody with it.
Well,
So
speaking of annoying, that wasn't the only suspension. Oh, I should mention, by the way, going back to here. So Ramirez appealed his suspension. I haven't had an update as of Wednesday afternoon what the update is on his suspension because he appealed it. It's probably going to go from 3 games to 1 game. Carlos Mendoza, the manager, did get suspended 1 game. He elected not to appeal. He served that suspension.
I learned something about that, by the way. Managers cannot appeal their suspensions anymore.
Oh, really?
I heard it on the Mets broadcast. So apparently managers are not allowed to appeal anymore. So if you get suspended, you're screwed. Which is not fair because the players get the manager suspended.
Right,
usually.
The pitchers.
So I don't know. I heard it on the Mets broadcast. So if they said it, I'm assuming they probably know better than we do.
Meanwhile, going over to Jose Cabrera. Now, as much as we talked about the McNeil and Hoskins controversy, I thought this one was really bad.
This one was petty, in my opinion.
Because Caballero was running, reaches third base. Cabrera is behind the Blue Jays third baseman, shoves Caballero, holds to his face for no reason other than the fact that he was mad.
And then it became face to face. Then it became face to face, and everybody was out on the field, and it was fight night again.
He had no reason being at third base other than that he wanted to shove Caballero.
From what I read, what I heard is that apparently he made an error or something earlier in the game and was mad. But what did I tell you? I think we talked. Don't take your frustrations out on the field.
I know, and I'm hoping, Nick. I haven't heard anything about an appeal on him. If he did appeal, I'm actually hoping MLB rejects it.
Yeah, usually how that goes is usually you get 1 game taken off. Usually when you appeal,
there's no reason for this. This is inexcusable.
I mean, I hate to say it again. That's baseball, Susan. Brawls and I mean, I'm not used to seeing brawls this early on in the season. Usually it takes. Usually everyone's in like a happy.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. There's a lot of intensity right now.
Oh, I just saw it. So it says Blue Jays reliever Genesis Cabrera's suspension reduced to 2 games.
I guess better than getting reduced to 1.
Like I said, usually there's a happy medium between the MLBPA. Well, that's a funny statement now that I just realized it.
The other thing, Tony Clark is very aggressive when it comes to his players.
Tony Clark apparently got his salary doubled. No, I'm actually being serious. It's not an April Fool's joke.
I know. Well, you know what's also not an April Fool's joke? The A-Rod ownership in Minnesota might be over before it even really officially gets started.
Ugh. Making NBA fans like myself like sick and with rashes because I feel like we can never get rid of A-Rod. Yeah, so A-Rod and Marc Lore have been working on this deal with Glen Taylor, for the owner of the Timberwolves, for a long time. Glen Taylor wants to sell, and I don't blame him. The owning a franchise in today's game, whether it's NBA, MLB, NHL, NFL, even soccer, you could get a lot of money if you do this correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, and I want to look this up just for how the deal worked, but they had an installment plan for payments. Usually that's not how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But Glen Taylor said, okay, I'm willing to work with A-Rod and Marc Lore to get the payments. And then by the time all the payments are done, they own the franchise. So the payments start, but here's the problem. 5 cycles apparently went by. How many payments do you think were made?
Nothing.
0. So here's the exact number. Lore and Rodriguez reached an agreement with Taylor in 2021 to buy the Timberwolves in 4 parts, starting with 20% at a $1.5 billion valuation and a 4% value escalator in each of the following payments. So each payment went 4% up each time. They currently hold 36%, and we're in the process of securing another 40% for about $600 million. When Taylor said they missed a March 27th deadline to close on a deal that the team was no longer being sold. So that's the rub and the kick. So because they missed the payment, Glen Taylor said, F you, I'm pulling out of the deal.
And now if they want to reach another deal, they have to reach a new, more expensive sale price.
So it says Lore and Rodriguez referenced a clause from their purchase agreement Section 6.4 Part A, which says the buyers should receive an automatic 90-day extension if they're submitted the signed financial subscriptions but are still waiting NBA approvals. The commitments were submitted on March 21st, 6 days before the deadline. The NBA approval is in process. So, I don't know. This was a little while ago, but...
So, in other words, this comes down to Adam Silver.
That's great. Well, it comes down to the owners, too, because they have to approve a new owner when they come in. I don't know anyone who want to approve A-Rod into ownership. That's just a scary situation in itself. But so it says, Lawyer and Rodriguez said their lawyers are currently speaking with the lawyers at the NBA. Oh, good. So if it wasn't enough that A-Rod and lawyers got involved with Major League Baseball with his steroid stuff, let's get more lawyers involved with A-Rod.
Jeez.
It says they did not commit to a lawsuit, but said they are willing to take action to defend their interpretation of the contract. Oh, so now we're going to get a bunch of fancy lawyers involved and contract language and blah, 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 blah.
Everything is falling apart in Minnesota.
And the Timberwolves are not a bad team.
Mm-hmm.
They have really good young talent, but their ownership can't hold up, which is what I don't get. So, Sportico, by the way, originally they were going for 1.5. Sportico's valuation has now pushed them to 2.94 billion. We're talking about almost double.
Yeah, so this litigation is going to be something that we're going to have to keep our eye on as the weeks go by.
We'll see.
Right.
It's interesting.
All right.
The fun part.
All right, so it is on my behalf. Well, on my behalf as the first speaker, it's going to be on all our behalf at this point.
Well, what are we doing first? So we can figure out.
I think we need to we need the big announcement first before we get into ours, because our big announcement is going to affect us. It gives the explanation on why we're not going to be on Thursday for the next month or so.
Let's just say it's all good things.
Yeah,
it's all good things.
On behalf of everyone at the Empty the Bench Network, we are pleased to welcome our new partner in playback.
Yes. So let's see. Let's make a long story short. So we were doing some stuff around the network. All of a sudden, this email comes in. I can say his name. It doesn't matter. Brandon Towers, who's the head of partnership and communication at Playback. It says, come take a meeting with us. We like your platform and whatever. I said, okay.
Apparently, like WolfSpreads, they had watched one of our live streams for NFL and loved basically what we were doing.
Yeah. So we go, we take a meeting, and basically the rest is history at this point. So what's so great about this playback platform is what we can't do on StreamYard, we can do there. We are legally allowed to air NBA feeds with the broadcast, with the audio, and we won't get zapped by YouTube.
We won't have another run-in with YouTube like we had last week.
Yeah, screw you, YouTube.
But we also are able to have little things where we can watch YouTube videos and such alongside all of you during streams.
Yeah, so just for clarification's sake, these are all, for the most part, going to be live streams. Actually, 99% of them are going to be live streams. So they have a deal with NBA League Pass right now. So we're going to be watching a lot of NBA to start. Our first
playoffs are getting underway.
So our first stream is going to be April 11th. And
Thursday
what's
night,
great...
Thursday night, April 11th, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be watching 2 NBA games. We're going to be watching... Yes, normally we just watch one NFL game where it's the national game. Instead here, we're actually going to watch 2 NBA games going on almost simultaneously, with the Chicago Bulls, Detroit Pistons kicking off that night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and then a half hour later, the New York Knicks and Boston Celtics tipping off at 7:30.
And we will have Knicks fans and Celtics fans and Bulls fans all across our network. So that'll be great. Think of this a little bit as Red Zone from the NFL with Scott Hansen.
Which we'll probably get more into, because right now the NBA season is obviously ending, the playoffs are starting, so we'll get more into an idea with that when the 24-25 NBA season starts up.
Right. And I can say, because we were having the discussion, it looks like MLB will be the next one on the horizon as well. So you will see us doing some MLB games.
My mic muted. I was doing the knock on wood.
So they basically said they're close on it. So
So I just want to thank Brandon. I want to thank everybody at Playback, because this is going to be, in my mind, going to be a really awesome partnership, and there's going to be a lot of new capabilities for ETB in the future.
yeah, this allows us, one, to become financially stable, number one, because now we can
Hopefully,
get people in and do what we need to do. We're a growing network. We're adding new content, and we have some stuff. One show we announced last week was Zan's new show, Bando's Breakdowns, which is still on track for April 17th. That'll be Wednesdays at 3 p.m. He's actually going to the Final Four as we speak.
right?
What else? I can't announce the other one yet because it doesn't have a name, but I will say that we have a women in sports show. That's what I can say right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be adding that.
We will talk about the official Playback schedule for April in the near future once we get some other things finalized.
We might do a separate video explaining that, just so everyone.
But as part of that, and due to Zan also going there for Final Four coverage, which is
fun, by the way,
which is going to be fantastic, and my own personal work schedule, because April is going to be really intense.
All our schedules are going to be nuts.
There is going to be a lot of changes, so it was not a joke. You will not see ETB Sports on Thursday. For the rest of the month. So our next show will be on Tuesday, April 9th, essentially because of Zan being at the Final Four and our first Playback stream. ETB Sports and my other show, the MMA Outsiders, are literally going to be swapping spots next week. So you will see the next episode of ETB Sports on MMA Outsiders' usual spot, Tuesday, April 9th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. You will catch the next episode, as I announced on the last MMA Outsiders. You'll catch the next episode of the MMA Outsiders in ETB Sports' normal spot, which would be Thursday, April 11th, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific.
Yeah, so just try to... We almost need like an MLB scorebook where they score all the plays.
Yeah,
just
so it's going to be Tuesday, April 9th, Friday, April 19th, and Tuesday, April 23rd will be the next 3 episodes of ETB Sports. The third one is because you're going to be going away that week.
Yeah, so I'm going to be away from the 23rd to the 26th because my niece and nephew are taking their first trip to Disney for the first time. So I'll be away for about 4 days. And
we will still do an NFL draft stream. It'll just be me at the lead now.
Well, you and Zan and a few others.
Yeah.
I'll be there somewhat on a laptop watching and doing some stuff to help. But I will be in Florida for when the draft is taking place. So it'll be fun. There's going to be a bunch of people involved. You have some behind the scenes help this year. Yeah. So that should help it. And then, like we said, just Playback starting. Please go support our stream, playback.tv/ETB network. You're going to start seeing that a lot when we start promoting these platforms. Yeah. The great thing about this is the stream key does not change. So
it's like,
yeah.
No, anytime we stream, like when we did the YouTube streams, it always changes. But there's only one link you got to go to for every stream, and that's going to be playback.tv/ETB network.
So just ingrain that in your head somewhere, or stamp it on your head. Yes. Don't do a tramp stamp. But yeah, just stamp it on your head. But my point is that playback.tv/ETB network. I had to get one joke in there. You knew I had to. But
end the show already.
Make sure you like and subscribe. YouTube.com/ETB network. Please help us grow and subscribe to our network. 726 subscribers. We need to. That's another thing. Hopefully, with Playback and all this stuff, we get to our 1,000 on subscribers. We start getting YouTube revenue. Then we really grow. Then we really accelerate the growth. So help us out.
Podcast.com Help us explode like etvpodcast.com is exploding with all the blog content over there. Shout out to all our contributors.
Yeah. So just make sure you check everything out. Make sure you get involved in the action. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Also, shout out, to those who are listening on our audio platforms, Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. Make sure to check out the YouTube feed as well for that. Okay, yeah, I think that's it. So, for Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano. This has been episode 227 of Empty the Bench. We will see you on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday this coming
Keep
week.
that in mind. No confusion here. We'll see you next week.